Hi, I'm Francis Potter, Solution Architect with GitLab. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about GitLab at scale. We get asked a lot by customers who are using our competitors, and as they grow their use of that tool and as they grow their development team and as they grow their adoption of DevSecOps throughout their organization, they realize that their current tool or tool chain or tool set doesn't scale the way they need it to. And so, and I find that the information about this and our response to it is sometimes a little scattered, and I wanted to pull it together into one place. So the number one reason why you might want to switch to GitLab is because GitLab isn't just Git, even though we have Git in the name. At its core of GitLab is our verify stage, which is our end-to-end CI/CD platform, industry-leading platform. But we also have our CD release, our monitoring, our packaging, which is a little bit like JFrog Artifactory, our security scanning, which is increasingly being recognized as world-class enterprise-grade security scanning. All that in addition to our create and plan stages, which are our basic sort of SCM type functionality. So in order to unlock all this other stuff, you might want to switch to GitLab. But there are more reasons than just that. Most of our competitors operate under an appliance model. So I'm talking now about the on-prem version of the application. Most of our competitors have this sort of appliance model where everything goes on one box. They give you a virtual appliance, and that sounds really simple and it works really well. The problem is that the only way to scale that is vertically, is to add resources and sort of have a bigger box, as it were. With GitLab, we offer a huge variety of ways of scaling, so you can really scale the application in a way that meets the needs of your particular organization. Whether that's by scaling the web service, by scaling the backend processing, by scaling the CI/CD runners, and all of those things that can be scaled can also be made highly available and redundant. So with the database, for example, you use the redundancy of your database system with object storage. Obviously, you can make that redundant, but we also have a way of making the Git storage redundant. So it can be complicated. Implementing GitLab is often more complex than implementing other solutions, but we do have reference architectures which provide sort of easy to use architecture recommendations at different scales in terms of numbers of users. So for example, if you have between 5 and 10,000 users, you probably want to adopt our 10,000 user reference architecture. And not only do we have a complete reference guide for how to deploy that architecture, but we also have performance tests of each of those architectures, which we maintain and monitor every time there's a new release of GitLab to make sure that that architecture is performing up to snuff and to improve it if it isn't. No matter where you want to install GitLab, we have an installation option for you. Fundamentally, it runs on Linux, but there are different versions of Linux, and we have packages available for many of the popular Linux distributions. We are also work directly with AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure, and there are easy steps to deploy GitLab on those public clouds. There's also a Docker version, and you can of course install from source if that's what you want to. In addition, some of our partners in the community have developed and maintained their own sort of unofficial versions of GitLab. So really there's, and finally, forgot to mention the Helm chart, of course, if you're running on Kubernetes and if you're a Kubernetes centric shop. So there's any number of different options, and all of these can be horizontally scaled, like I was saying before. You really start to see how GitLab is far more than the competitors that are only offering that one appliance, as it were. GitLab is cloud agnostic. If you're using GitLab for CD, for doing deployment, you can deploy anywhere. There's nothing that ties you down to a specific cloud, whether that's AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, or DigitalOcean, IBM, Red Hat, VMware, whatever it is, your on-prem solution, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter where GitLab is deployed. So for example, you could have GitLab deployed on AWS that is deploying its application, your applications to DigitalOcean. Completely acceptable. We do it all the time. And the cloud agnosticity is an important value to GitLab and one that is supported at every level throughout the organization. One of the ways that we enables us to make GitLab highly available at any scale is Gitaly Cluster. So Gitaly is our custom implementation of the Git protocol. It's an RPC wrapper around Git. And we now have a clustered version of Gitaly so that every single part of the Gitaly infrastructure is replicated and redundant and scalable. And that now includes scaling your Git read operations across multiple storage devices in the cluster. So very advanced, one of the world's most advanced, if not the most advanced, Git scaling infrastructure is available exclusively through GitLab and is built into the GitLab application and those reference architectures. GitLab also supports zero downtime upgrades as a standard. This is not normal for our competitors. Most of our competitors, you have to actually take the system down in order to upgrade. With GitLab, zero downtime upgrades are possible. Now, obviously that doesn't work if you only have a single node installation, but for any of these horizontally scaled installations, you can do zero downtime upgrades. And that's important if you have large teams where even a small amount of downtime could be very costly. GitLab also supports Geo Replication. Then there are two purposes for Geo Replication. The first is disaster recovery, which is if your primary node, your primary site goes down for some reason, then you can switch over to your secondary site and your users can access GitLab, all of the features of GitLab at the secondary site, fully operational. The second use case is latency reduction for teams that are overseas and they want to be able to perform Git operations like clones and pulls at higher speed. And because you're maintaining copies of all of your Git repos in all of those locations, those teams are able to work at a much faster speed with that geo replication. And although this diagram shows two different sites for your geo nodes, it's possible to replicate those indefinitely. So if you have a team in Europe, a team in China, whatever you have, you can use GitLab Geo for that replication. GitLab ships with an enormous self-monitoring capability so that you can use GitLab, because remember, one of the things GitLab does is monitor, including monitoring itself, so that you can include GitLab and manage GitLab effectively and see what's going on under the hood from within the application. Now, of course, you can also monitor GitLab using your external Prometheus or your Splunk or whatever you use in your enterprise to monitor. But this comes out of the box and certainly makes it easy to get started with your monitoring of GitLab. GitLab offers priority support for premium and ultimate customers, which is all paying customers. Okay, and what that means is that you get next business day support and in emergencies, a 30-minute SLA. And this is whether you're on our self-managed or on our software as a service. Our support team is world-class. They're super smart. I call them all the time with questions. And we really are very proud of having some of the best support in the industry. This also means if you're doing an upgrade or a migration and it might be kind of complicated, you can actually give the support team advance notice and they can make sure that they're there to help you if any problems come up during that process. Once you are a GitLab customer, you are part of our organization, and I should add that support is included in your license. It's not a separate fee. Okay, GitLab is at the core an open source project. It started as an open source project. Well over half the application is still open source. You can download it and run it for free today. Thousands, tens of thousands of companies do that. That also means that we have contributors. There's a community with thousands of developers who are contributing code to GitLab. And what this means is that there's an openness to GitLab. So if you find a bug or if you need a feature added, sometimes there's already somebody working on that in the community and you can reach out and find those people and work with them to solve that problem quickly. So in terms of our ability to adapt to your requirements quickly, there really is no replacement for having that open source core and that thriving community of contributors. And we do deliver quickly. There are new official numbered versions of GitLab on the 22nd of every month. We've been consistent about that for years. The number of new features in each of those releases is mind-blowingly astronomical. But also there actually is development going on all the time, and new features are deployed to our software as a service offering even more frequently than that. So there's a rapidity to our releases. Quite often I talk to a customer or prospect and they say, hey, I'd really like to see X in the product. And by the time they actually buy, it's there. And that has literally happened on multiple occasions in the last couple of years. I should also add that unlike most of our competitors, our software as a service and self-managed offerings are identical code bases. And what that means is that if we're developing features for our software as a service customers, you get those in your self-managed offering. There is no difference whatsoever between the two. The only difference is that your self-managed offering doesn't have the payment portal that allows people to set up separate accounts. But otherwise, it's exactly the same. And that's an important value for us, that we're only maintaining one code base, as it were. Okay, because it's open source, all of our plans and all of our progress are transparent. What that means is you as a GitLab customer or a GitLab prospect can go into our issue tracker and you can see the exact issues that are being worked on or that are being planned or that have been worked on in the past by engineers. You can follow them and track them. You can add comments to them. And if you're a developer, you can even work on them if that's what you want to do. And our roadmap, people say, oh, you know, send me your roadmap. Our roadmap is a constantly evolving feature of GitLab itself. You'll notice this is using GitLab to build GitLab, which is exactly what we do. GitLab's fundamental value is to speed software development, and we use GitLab to make sure that we are speeding the development of GitLab to get you your features and meet your needs as quickly as possible. And that is all extremely transparent. In addition, the code is transparent. I told you that the core GitLab software is open source, but what I haven't told you yet is that even the parts that are proprietary, we still publish the source code so that if there's ever a problem or you ever have a question about exactly how something is supposed to work, you can go in and look at it. None of this is hidden from you. And so this, although you probably won't do it very often, occasionally it is handy to be able to go in and look at the code for something that's going on in your GitLab installation. We have thousands of really, really happy customers and hundreds that are using GitLab at scales above 1,000 users. So these are some examples: Northwestern Mutual, Verizon, NVIDIA, all of them performed comparisons between GitLab and GitHub or Bitbucket or other Git-based solutions. They chose GitLab for the reasons that I've described here. They migrated to GitLab from their other solution, and they're happy and satisfied with that and excited about that. Thanks very much for watching. I really hope that this helps.